Have you ever seriously asked yourself where the idea of God actually comes from? Not from holy books, but from inside the human mind? Well, Sigmund Freud had a theory, a really shocking one. He believed that our concept of God, our nagging sense of guilt, and even civilization itself were all born from a single, horrific crime. Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7. Today, we are diving headfirst into Freud's radical and deeply atheistic explanation for why we believe.
Okay, let's just let that sink in for a moment. Freud wasn't interested in divine revelation. No, for him, religion was something else entirely. He saw it as a kind of psychological echo, the ghost of a brutal, prehistoric event that permanently scarred the human psyche.
So, how did he even start to build such a wild case? Well, he didn't start by digging up ancient bones. He started right in his own consulting room, with his patients. And there, he noticed something, a bizarre and fascinating parallel between private obsessions and public worship. This is where it gets really interesting. Freud looked at the strange, repetitive actions of his neurotic patients, these very private rituals, and saw a mirror image of religious ceremony. Think about it. If his patient missed their ritual, they felt this overwhelming guilt. Sound familiar? Just like a devout person might feel for missing a prayer. Both are done with painstaking detail, and both are completely separate from the normal, everyday flow of life. For Freud, this was just too similar to be a coincidence. So what was actually going on here, in Freud's view? He saw this neurosis as a full-on war inside the mind. You have this forbidden desire, something aggressive or sexual, that gets shoved down, repressed. But it doesn't just go away. Of course not. It pushes back, creating this tidal wave of anxiety and guilt. So the ritual? That's just a desperate defense mechanism. It's a symbolic act you perform over and over to keep that forbidden thought locked down. And here it is. This is Freud's huge, audacious leap. He basically says, okay, if one person doing private ritual is a personal neuroses, then what is it when an entire civilization performs public rituals? His answer? It's a collective neurosis. We are all, as a species, performing these sacred acts to keep some ancient, shared, forbidden desire buried deep in our unconscious. Which leads to the biggest question of all. If religion is a collective mental hang-up, then it must have started with some kind of collective trauma. What on earth happened? What was the original catastrophic event that set this all off? What is this one great forbidden desire we've all been suppressing for thousands of years? Well, in his book Totem and Taboo, Freud lays out a story that is frankly a psychological horror show. He imagines our earliest ancestors living in a primal horde, ruled by one tyrannical father. This guy kept all the women for himself and kicked his sons out. So what did the exiled brothers do? They ganged up, came back, and did the unthinkable. They killed their father. And then they ate him, hoping to absorb his power. But here's the twist. They hated him, but they also loved and admired him, and the act plunged them into a bottomless pit of guilt. To make sure nothing like this could ever happen again, they created the two very first rules of civilization. You cannot kill the totem animal, which was their new father's substitute, and you cannot have sex with the women of your own clan, the very thing they killed for in the first place. Wow. I mean, that is an intense and pretty disturbing story. Look, if you're finding this exploration of Freud's wild ideas as fascinating as I am, do me a quick favor. If you like my channel, please subscribe and hit that like button. It really, really helps us keep making these deep dives. So, this one incredibly violent act created the first laws of society. But according to Freud, it did something much, much bigger. This event was the very thing that gave birth to the idea of God. I know, it sounds like a massive stretch, right? How do you get from a prehistoric murder to Zeus or Shiva or the all-powerful god of monotheism? For Freud, the answer was simple. It all comes back to that nagging, relentless, unbearable guilt of the sons. You see, the brothers spent the rest of human history trying to make things right. First, they poured all their guilty feelings onto a totem animal, which became their father substitute. They worshipped it, but once a year, they would ritually kill and eat it to reenact the crime and remember their guilt. But as societies got more complex, an animal just wasn't enough, so the father figure evolved into human-like gods. And then, thousands of years later, it all came full circle, culminating in the ultimate father figure, the one all-powerful, exalted Father God. The original father was back, bigger and more powerful than ever. Now for Freud, this entire grand, sweeping drama of history was just a giant, scaled-up version of a conflict he believed every single one of us goes through as a child, the Oedipus complex. That primal crime of the brothers killing the father, for Freud, that was just the very first, unsuccessful attempt to resolve the Oedipus complex, that unconscious drive to get rid of one parent to possess the other. In essence, religion is just civilization's massive, unending Oedipus complex. And this brings us to Freud's final and maybe his most challenging conclusion. If God is just a psychological projection, a ghost born from our guilt and our longing for dear old dad, then what does that make religious belief itself? According to Freud, religion's power has absolutely nothing to do with whether it's true. It sticks around because it is incredibly useful. It perfectly satisfies our deepest childhood needs. It gives us that all-powerful father figure we crave to protect us from a scary world and from the reality of death. It takes that primal guilt and turns it into a moral code we can all share. And maybe most importantly, it tells us a comforting story that our short, fragile lives actually matter in the grand scheme of things. It is, he said, a beautiful, powerful illusion. So when you boil it all down, after all the history, the rituals, the theology, the magnificent cathedrals, for Freud it all comes back to something incredibly simple and deeply human. It comes back to our messy, complicated relationship with the Father. The one we feared, the one we hated, and the one we've been longing for ever since. And this really leaves us with the big, provocative question at the heart of Freud's entire argument. If he's right, if our belief in God is a kind of psychological security blanket that we wove from ancient trauma and childhood wishes, can we, as a species, ever grow up enough to let it go? To face the universe on our own without it? What would that even look like? Now that is something to think about.